Hey, everybody, it's Erin Carey. Welcome back to Sparking Wholeness. Today, I am sitting down with Linda Stevens. Linda's primary focus is working with midlife women over 40, 50, and beyond to help them achieve confidence, exude sexiness, and feel comfortable in their own skin again. Her motto is midlife should be the bridge to your new life. I love that. Linda has developed a comprehensive 6-week program taught virtually to women around the globe called Midlife Mastery. Linda guides women by educating them on how their bodies change in midlife. Women involved in the program learn cutting edge science backed data for hormone balance, longevity, mood, libido. We all want that. And weight loss. People want that too. Linda holds her master's degree in nutrition, competed as an IFBB figure pro, and is an NASM certified personal trainer. Linda has written for Live Strong, Darian Magazine, Oxygen Magazine, Muscle and Fitness, Hers, contributed to Strong Magazine, and she has her own health and wellness channel on plus.muscleandfitness.com. She is a midlife woman herself, a mom of two children, 19 and 21, and she lives far, far away from Texas in Connecticut. And so, Linda, welcome to the show. So glad to have you on.
Thank you, Erin. I am too. And I saw your podcast with my friend, Dr. Silverman. So,
Yeah. Oh, that
great.
was a fun one. We had a lot of fun. I think this is going to
Yeah.
be good too. And I think, a lot of my listeners do have the question, what can I be doing in my 30s to prepare for what's coming? Now, I know for me, when I was in my 20s, I didn't care so much, right? But
Right.
once you get into your 30s and then you notice, maybe women are having babies and bodies are changing, realizing, oh, this is going to be the rest of my life, body changing and things happening and hormones fluctuating. What can we do to prepare? So tell me why you have gotten focused in this avenue.
I I have my focus in this is because I want women to feel great as they age. And being a 55-year-old woman myself, it's important because we go through so many changes and sometimes we're not thinking about, like, I've talked to younger women like 30 somethings, and they sometimes they're like, I don't even want to think about that perimenopause, menopause, that's so far off. And I don't even remember thinking about it when I was in my 30s. I had two little kids, and my world was that. You know how it is. They get up, and from the minute they're up, it's all about them. You really don't think about yourself much except for when they go to bed and you're like, oh my God, I need to go to bed. And it just starts, and you're so involved in them that I don't think you realize you're about yourself until they start to maybe go to high school. They're starting to look at colleges, and then you start to look at yourself and say, okay, who am I? I know what I've been for these last 18 years or 19 years, but who am I now? And why do I feel this way? I never felt, you know, tired, or my libido, you don't want to have sex anymore. Maybe it's painful. You're not sleeping great. You just feel achy. You have anxiety that you never had before. I know I can speak for myself. I never had anxiety probably until the last couple of years. And sometimes situations will happen and I'm like, I'm like, this must be anxiety. I never had it before. And you feel that angst that you get. And there are so many symptoms that we go through in midlife, but you don't really think about it. And even in my early 40s, I never really thought much about it. But I really wish that there was someone that would have said to me, "Hey, go do your hormones. Get a baseline hormone panel, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. Check a full thyroid." And other things, inflammatory markers. And maybe they didn't know that much back then, maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago, but it's really important because then you can see where you're at. Like, hey, I feel great. I'm 42. I feel good. So where are my hormones at? Oh, here are your levels. All right. So you want to aim to keep your levels there so that as you go through your late 40s and you enter your 50s, and then you start to you're in perimenopause, you may be able to avoid some of these symptoms, night sweats, hot flashes, just those kind of things as you go through menopause, so that you feel good. And we should. And I think it's amazing to me, Erin, how many mainstream MDs, and no, not placing shade on doctors because they're very important, but many of them, from what my clients tell me, and even one of my own healthcare providers that I've talked to, are really not supportive of testing hormones. We'll say you don't need to do it. It's not necessary. Oh, you are menopausal. So yeah, your hormones are going to be low. So we don't need to check them. But it's like, wait, just because that's a thing doesn't mean that you have to accept that. Like you can do things because there's so many health things that happen to us as we get 60, 70, 80, bone loss, cardiovascular disease, cognitive health. Those are three big things that really affect how we age.
Yeah, and they're all connected too.
Yeah.
And that's so you touch on something I think this is important for people to hear, to get the labs, have the data, because then you can know, like when you're starting to feel off and maybe it's
Mhm.
you're increasingly feeling more off, you'll be
Right.
able to look back and go, okay, well, 2 years ago my numbers were here and now my numbers are here. I mean, labs don't lie, labs tell a story. So I think that that's really helpful.
It's really helpful. And I've met Dr. Sarah Gottfried several times. I don't know if you know who
Mhm.
she is or not, but I've listened to her lecture several times. I've talked to her in person one-on-one. I have all her books. I follow her on social media. She's such a beacon for women.
Mhm, she
And
is.
she gave a lecture one time, and I actually stumbled across the clip the other day that I had videoed, but she talked about how a woman can be in this midlife space, right? 40, I say 40, 50 and beyond, because it sort of encompasses all of us. But like you may say, oh, my lower back's bothering me. So maybe you go to an orthopedist and he puts you on an anti-inflammatory. But then something else is bothering you, or maybe your metabolism is slow. You're putting on weight, you don't understand why. And you go somewhere else and they give you something else. And she said, what's the problem with modern medicine is that we don't treat the woman as a whole, we just treat the symptoms. So then
Mhm,
you're taking a whole bunch of different medications when really it could just be, maybe your sleep is crappy because your progesterone is low, which is my issue right now.
mhm.
But maybe they put you on some other pharmaceutical to sleep, but you're not really taking care of the problem. Like, hey, your hormones are off, and if we level you out, you may see some of these things sort of slowly go away over time. So that's a really big thing, is that I think as women, we just think, oh, I need to go to this doctor or that doctor or that doctor because I'm having this problem or that problem, or, my gut is upset. So maybe you need, like a Prilosec, if they still make that, or some sort of
Mhm.
medicine of that nature, when maybe you really don't. It's just other things going on.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're sharing how many of these symptoms can be contributing
Mhm.
because, and it's one of those things where, like, okay, so 0 to 40, right? 0 to 38, whenever these symptoms start for women, that's first half of your life. Well,
I know.
assuming you're going to live 30, 40 more years, that could be 30, 40 more years of thriving or surviving.
Right.
And so these symptoms are clues that your body is giving you, and it's time to tune in. And so you make some very, very important points on checking in as things are changing. That is your body telling you a story.
Absolutely. And my mom, she's almost 80, but she suffers from really bad osteoarthritis, osteoporosis. And I can't help but wonder, back in her time, when she was around during the Women's Health Initiative, when they were using Premarin and other things, and
Mhm.
then they yanked everybody off it because they thought it caused cancer. But that's all since been debunked with,
Mhm.
lots of new science and information. But I can't help but wonder if she had been using some estrogen, some hormone replacement therapy, it might have helped, her not have such severe bone density issues.
Yeah.
Because she'll say to me, sometimes, like, just be careful, make sure you're, eating enough calcium, or doing this or doing that. And all those things are super important. But I mean, if your estrogen's really low, it's really going to affect how your body absorbs the calcium supplements that you're taking, or if you're getting the maximum benefit from your strength training, or, the nutritional foods that you're eating. So it's so important. And so many women don't realize it. When I talk to them, they're like, oh, no one ever asked me to check my hormones. Like, no doctor never even brought it up. Not even my female OBGYN brought it up. And I said, well, let's ask her to do it. And some doctors are cool with it. And then some are like, nah, you don't need to do it. And then
Mhm.
I have a way for them to be able to buy a script, and they can go to a lab and have their blood drawn, and then we
Yeah.
can look at it. And because it is, I'm just, it's really a hot button for me. I'm really passionate about it
Mhm.
because I'm going through it myself. And
Mhm.
I am going to use bioidenticals because I know, like you said, being 55, I'd like to live a long time. I don't know, 95, 100. I'm not really sure. But I know I want to move and I don't want to be on a walker and I still want to have all my cognitive abilities and be able to be with maybe grandkids or still be doing this kind of stuff. So it's important.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And, one of the complaints that I hear the most, because of course, we can talk about, and I'd love to get into the mental health concerns that happen around this time as hormones are fluctuating. But like you said, like gut issues and all sorts of things. But the one complaint that I hear the most is weight gain.
Right.
What is going on there? I mean, does everybody have to gain an average of 20 pounds in menopause, like they say?
It is something like 10 to 15 pounds or
Yeah.
something like that. It really is. But I believe that we can avoid that if I was listening to, and I think I don't know if you have interviewed her or not, the doctor that made the Galveston diet, that wrote the
Yeah,
Galveston
Dr.
diet book.
Haver. Uh-huh.
Yes. So I have her book. I've listened to some podcasts with her. I think she's
Mhm.
pretty awesome. And I think it was either her or another doctor she was on a podcast with said, the way that you arrive to perimenopause is how you're going to go through it. And I don't know if you've heard her say that or not, but I love that. It really resonated with me and I kind of stole it a little bit, but I'll give her she definitely always gets the credit when I use it. But it's true. Like if you arrive to perimenopause in good shape, you have a good strength training, exercise, cardiovascular routine, you're eating well, taking care of yourself, you're going to have an easier time going through it. But if you arrive to perimenopause, not in shape, you're more sedentary, maybe you're drinking too much wine at night or on the weekends, too much alcohol, and you're just eating a lot of processed foods or you're skipping meals and then you kind of overeat because you're so hungry, you're going to have a harder time going through perimenopause because you probably have excess body fat and our ovaries make our hormones. And as our ovaries the factory starts to slow down, fat cells will kick off estrogen. So the more fat cells you have, your body will make more fat cells because your body's trying to make estrogen in any way, shape, or form that it can make it. And then that can become a problem too. So, coupling decent eating with movement makes a big, big difference in how you're going to go through it, what your body's going to look like, and just overall taking care of yourself. Enough protein is the key because protein, and so many women don't eat enough protein.
Right.
I always hear when I say, tell me what breakfast is like. Well, sometimes I have an egg. I'm like,
Oh, one egg.
one?
Oh.
I'm like, you do realize that one egg is like 6 grams of protein and you probably need about 30 at a serving. And people are like, 30, their eyes pop.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I said, yes, pretty much at every meal, you should probably aim for 25 to 30 grams of protein. It's important for your skin, every cell in your body, like everything. It's just the lifeblood. So there's so many things that women in this demographic don't understand. And I feel like it's my job and other people out there like Dr. Gottfried and Dr. Haver and to spread the word so that people get the clue and start changing things.
Yeah, I am so glad that you mentioned protein because I feel like I am like constantly on replay talking about protein with women because we don't gravitate towards it.
Mhm.
And I don't, not to be sexist, but it seems like men gravitate towards it more easily. My husband could be carnivore all day, every day. He loves it. I just don't have the taste for it. And I've kind of had to train myself to make sure that I'm eating enough. And when I do, I feel amazing. If I can hit like 80 grams of protein by 1 o'clock,
Mhm.
I have so much energy the rest of the day. And I don't think a lot of women realize that when they're pulling up to the Starbucks line at 2 p.m., you know?
Right. They're getting something with a lot of sugar in it. And that's what happens too. So in my business, I do a bunch of different things. I have one-on-one coaching where I work with someone one-on-one. We change their diet, we change their exercise program, they check in, they're accountable, all that. I run a program called Midlife Mastery, which is a 6-week course that I do over Zoom. And I talk in different segments about how we should be living, like nutrition, supplements, strength training, libido. I talk about endocrine disruptors, all those things that just affect us as we get older that can mess up our hormone balance. But the protein is people at that 3, 4 o'clock hour is that witching hour when people are going for the sugary something or the caffeine or the chocolate or whatever, whatever it is. And when I get someone that adheres to the program that I give them and they're eating, I usually have them eating 4 times a day and they're getting enough protein at each serving, they'll say to me, well, I just don't have sugar cravings anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, funny how that is, right? You start giving your body the nutrients that it needs in the right amounts consistently, keeping your blood sugar consistent. All of a sudden now you're not going, oh, I really want to have a Krispy Kreme at 3 o'clock with a sugary coffee. Like they're like, I don't really crave it. I went to a party and there was a dessert table and I just kind of walked away from it. So I'm like, yes, you've got to give your body the right fuel and then it'll pay you back in dividends.
Yeah. Yeah, it will. I can attest to that myself. And I've seen that with a lot of people. And it works for kids too. Kids need the protein also. I mean, everybody, we all need more protein. I think for a long time, because we were told that fat is bad, that started to
Right.
trickle down even into protein. And now we're being told that animal protein is bad. So, so it's just, there's a lot of noise out there. And think about what our ancestors survived on. That kind of helps give an indicator of what we should be eating.
Oh,
So,
totally.
yeah.
Totally. And it's unfortunate they throw shade on red meat
Mhm.
because, if you listen to like the Dr. Mark Hymans or, some of the other nutrition gurus, doctors that are out there, and it's really the quality. Like you've got to buy grass-fed,
Mhm.
grass-fed pasture-raised eggs, chickens, grass-fed beef. Other types, people are eating elk and bison and other types of meats now too that are farm raised responsibly, because those meats tend to be leaner, they're less fatty. So, factory meat, chicken, things like that, they're just doing. I listened to something yesterday on Instagram where they said they bleach chicken. Pretty
Ugh,
much if you don't buy like organic free range chicken, any other chicken that you buy in the store, it goes through some kind of a bleaching process.
I believe it.
I never heard that one. I'm like, geez. And then one of my clients sent me a message and said, what, can we not eat anything anymore? And I'm like, no, we can. It's got to be the right. It's got to be the right organic. Everything's got to be farm raised now, which is kind of funny. I always say we have to pay a premium for animals that eat grass and are free range, when that's what they did way back when, right in the caveman days, or even in like Little House on the Prairie days.
Yeah.
Animals were just eating grass and walking around, and it was the way it was. And now it's cheaper to buy something that's genetically modified and all these other
Mhm.
things, but to get an animal
Yeah.
in its natural state is so expensive.
Yeah, yeah, I know. And it's, yeah, I could go on and on about that
I
one,
know
but yes, protein important, but quality protein is
quality is
even
important.
more important. So,
And you can do, you can use plant proteins and pair things like beans and rice and things to make a complete protein. You can certainly do those things, but if you eat fish or eggs and you don't want to eat like poultry or red meat, that's cool. Like just find what your source is, but then make sure you're getting enough of it. It's just so important.
yeah, I agree. How do you feel about protein shakes, protein powders that are good quality? Does that help women when they just don't feel like they're getting enough?
I like it. I just actually had one before we hopped on this,
Me
but
too.
I enjoy it because you can put so many things in it
Mhm.
also. Some people will throw spinach and kale in it. Some people will put fruit in it. You can put tons of things in it. And when you find a good quality, good clean one, it's just a great way to kind of mix it up and it feels like you can make it. I put mine in the blender with ice and I put a little chocolate, Vital Proteins, collagen powder in it. Maybe
Mhm.
I shake a little instant coffee in mine and I make this concoction and it's like a milkshake and I love it. It's, you know what I mean? It's good. I'm getting some protein. It just changes it up a little bit. And if you're in a hurry, it's a great way to just, if you're in the car and you have young kids and you're like, I'll have women tell me they can't eat because they're always driving around. I'm like, keep your shaker cup, just have your dry ingredients in it.
Yep.
Add, the little almond milks, if you want to use almond milk, you don't have to refrigerate them. Just keep it in the car with you, add it, add water, whatever it is, shake it up, drink it. If you're in a board meeting and you can't eat a meal in front of people, you would drink coffee or water, you could drink a protein shake.
Right.
So it's versatile. You can travel with it. It makes it easy.
Yeah, and there are lots like back to the quality. There's lots of good quality brands out there. I mean, you just look up grass-fed whey protein, you're going to find a lot of options. And there's bone broth protein that's good. I mean, there's so many options. So I'm with you. I think it's helpful. I mean, in fact, my husband and I were about to go on vacation and we're like, okay, we're going to bring our little baggies of protein powder because
Mhm.
even on vacation, when it's, you're buying stuff at the grocery store for an Airbnb, sometimes it's nice to have your what you normally have. And protein is a part of what we normally have when we're hungry to avoid the hanger, right?
Yeah, it's awesome. I'll make when I travel. I'm like you. I'll pack protein oats, so I'll do a scoop of
Hmm.
oatmeal, and then I'll put my protein powder in it in the baggy, dry, little cinnamon, whatever else I want to add to it, and just squeeze the air out. And then I tuck them in my shaker cup. I can get 5 or 6 of them in there, and then I just throw it in my bag. But it's a great way. You can always find hot water somewhere and just make some oatmeal.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I love that. That's very doable for so many people. That's super helpful. So while we're on the topic of protein, let's talk about muscle. And I noticed, so you revealed your age earlier to me. I don't know if you have yet while we've been recording, but you have great muscle tone. How can we do this over 40? How do we do it? Because it's hard. We're not building, we're losing, right?
Right, right. And muscle, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, she's another one that's awesome because she
Mhm.
talks about she has a statement about how I think muscle is the longevity muscle or something
It
like that.
is, yeah.
But if you're a woman that has been in the gym and knows her way around the gym, the best piece of advice I can give is you have to push yourself. And I say this all the time, and you'll probably hear it all the time, but you will not get big and bulky and turn into a male bodybuilder if you pick up a 20-pound dumbbell or a 30-pound dumbbell or get under a barbell and maybe do some, squats or bicep curls. It's not going to happen. We just don't have that enough testosterone. We have a lot of testosterone, but not enough to turn ourselves into a man. So you have to challenge yourself, because when you push the muscle to sort of break down and then it repairs itself, that's how it gets stronger. So I like to tell women, you've got to ditch the 5-pounders, pick up the 15s, pick up the 12s, pick up the 20s. Most women can handle 15 or 20-pound dumbbells. And you might be a little bit sore, but that's okay. But you have to challenge yourself, and you have to challenge your body, so that as you build more muscle mass and you build a nice lean physique, or it just keeps you metabolically active, just meaning that
Yeah.
your muscle is always churning and burning calories. Fat just sits there. So if you decide you want to take a rest day and you want to sit on the sofa and enjoy yourself and put your feet up, you might be like, oh, I'm getting hungry. I'm not doing anything. Why am I hungry? Well, that's your muscle mass working, and you need to fuel it. So even on rest days, and it's important. And if you're a woman that hasn't been doing much strength training, maybe you're doing more yoga and Pilates, and those things are awesome for joint mobility and staying flexible, which I love. But you want to get into the gym. I would say a minimum of twice a week. 3 times would be great, and start lifting some weights. And if you're not sure what to do, hire a trainer, find somebody good, maybe somebody in your gym. You can contact me, or you can, there's a lot of online things, but you just want to make sure that your form is good if you're doing certain movements.
Mm.
But, definitely adding strength training. Plus, it just makes you feel good. There's a high that comes from it, that when you walk out after a hard leg workout, or you're sweating and you're like, oh, that feels really good. Or now you're starting to see, you like how your arms look when you put a sleeveless shirt on, or people start to comment. That's fun. It should be fun.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I think so many women, and I've talked about this on the show before, so listeners, you're probably sick of me hearing it, but I spent a good portion of my 20s and 30s doing cardio because I thought, well, that's what makes you skinny,
Right,
right? And it's well, and also there's a high you get of the movement and the fast pace, which
right.
I have realized later that's just kind of me burning out my stress chemicals. And it was probably more of a stressor than something that was supporting me. And so that's something I wish I'd known a long time ago, is I could have been strength training. And that's
Mhm.
something that I only recently added in. And it feels weird at first, and I've always done yoga, which is, I guess,
Right.
like you said, flexibility, functional body
Yeah,
weight,
it's
whatever.
good. It helps you
But
relax. There's a
yes,
lot of good benefits to it.
yes. But strength training has a big role in how we do health wise as we age. I mean, because of the muscle.
Exactly. And then that's where eating enough protein comes in too, because now you're giving your body the building blocks to build that muscle, which is crucial as we get older, because I don't want to be on a walker. I'm sure you don't want to be on a
Mm-mm.
walker. I want to be able to bend down and pick something up, and that's like a squat movement. Or if you have to reach for something, that's a hip hinge movement, more of like a
Mhm.
deadlift movement. So those are things that we want to learn, so that it's not like, oh, you bent over to pick something up and you rounded your back and now you pulled something on the way up and you're like, oh, my back is killing me. And you learn how to squat down and use your leg muscles to bring you down, or if you have to reach for something, how to sort of keep your back flat as you reach for something and brace yourself and build your core muscles. It's so key to how we age when we see people hunched over and kind of
Mhm.
needing people to help them. And it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. Yeah. My motivation when I'm exercising is I want to be able to travel when my kids are grown, and I want to be able to walk for miles and miles and miles. And I want to be able to pick up my grandbabies and get up and down from the floor, because my third baby I had when I was 35. So who knows when I'm going to be a grandma. And so I want to start preparing for that now, and be ready to not be sore, not be able to get up off the floor when I'm older.
And the great thing about that too is I try to instill on my some of my younger clients that have smaller kids. If sometimes if they say, well, I'm so busy, I'm too stressed, I don't have time to eat or do this or do that. But I always tell them this, your kids, anybody that's a mom that's listening knows kids are little sponges. And we think, oh, they're not noticing. They don't know. They know everything. They
Mhm.
know everything. From a small age, they watch what we do, they mimic what we do, and they take on our characteristics or how we react to things. Like they just absorb what we do. And I always tell them, especially if you have daughters, your daughters are going to watch you. And if they see mom taking care of herself, if they see mom stopping to sit down and eat something healthy, or, mom's drinking water, or there are not a lot of sugary processed foods, snack things in the house, the kids are eating fruit for snacks, or, other things that are better for them, nuts, maybe
Mhm.
things
Mhm.
like that. They'll grow up like that's going to become their baseline, because they're going to say, we always took care of ourselves in my home. My mom exercised, my mom lifted weights. I'm going to do that. I want to do that. Or how many little kids want to exercise with their mom? Like my kids would be like that. I'd be downstairs doing stuff and they'd be on the floor trying to do push-ups or whatever. It was always very cute. But now, both of my children, I have a 22-year-old son who was a baseball player. He's in college. My daughter's a basketball player. She's 19. But they both love being in the gym. They work out, her more than him, but I'm hoping he'll come back around. But it's because, she'll say things like, Mom, I love being in the gym and just I want to have muscle like you. I want to look like you when I'm your age. And those are really nice things to hear. So the motivation, I always try to say, look, your kids are watching you. So the things that you do, they're gonna do. So how do you want your kids to be healthy when they grow up? Oh yeah, absolutely, of course. Well, then you need to show them how to do it. So that's key.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's important, like you said, whether it's movement that we're actively engaged in or the food that we have around the house that we're consuming. And with that, I think it's a good segue to talk about alcohol consumption, because
Yes.
I just read, I don't know if you've seen this, the reports on binge drinking just skyrocketing in people in their 30s to 50s. And
Mhm.
I think about growing up, I was in high school, middle school, high school in the 90s. I don't remember the adults around me drinking a lot of alcohol, but that all shifted at some point to where it's like every single event, social drinking is a big thing. How is that hurting us as we age?
It's definitely a big thing. And it's always interesting too how women that are my age, 50 somethings, will say, well, I have to have a drink, or people will wonder or ask, or
Hmm. Hmm.
and I always say to them, like, are you a grown up? Are you a grown up? Like, I tell them, like, get Pellegrino. I do Pellegrino in a wine glass with lime. I'm like, nobody knows what it is. It could be a gin and tonic. It could be a vodka this. Who's going to know? Put some little cranberry juice in it if you really feel like you want it to look. I mean, are they going to taste your drink? I mean, how are they going to know? But alcohol is just, for us as women, especially as we age, it affects estrogen in the sense that our liver has to stop detoxifying the estrogen in our system that we get rid of. that starts to pile up because your liver stops doing that to get rid of the alcohol in your blood. So now if you're someone who drinks every day, a couple drinks a day, or maybe it's more on the weekends, you party Friday and Saturday, but you're affecting that. And that estrogen that starts to pile up, that's what can start to cause cancer problems and health risks. And that's when it becomes an issue. And plus it doesn't do anything good for us. If you drink before bed, it's going to give you hot night sweats, hot flashes. It's going to mess up your sleep. It may help you fall asleep, but I know when in the past, I used to drink wine at night and I would fall asleep and I'd wake up like, oh my God, and I'd be wide awake and I couldn't get back to sleep. So I always encourage women to stop, but if they can't stop, at least let's incrementally start to like pull it back. Like maybe it's a glass of wine on the Friday night and Saturday night, or whatever it is. Or if you're going to an event, maybe it's one drink and then you switch to Pellegrino or something. Like I try to work with them a little bit. And I know since COVID too, people started drinking way more
So
than
much. Yeah.
so that is an issue too. And then that just puts on excess weight. It makes you feel lethargic. Your skin dries out. I tell women, I'm like, look, you're going to age a lot faster because that alcohol is just drying out your skin. So I feel like, we did all that in our 20s and 30 somethings. Now it's kind of time to focus on something different, which is anti-aging and thinking about how you want to go down the aging process.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just the research on, I think it's Dr. Daniel Amen, who's been talking a lot about how it shrinks the brain. And there's
Yes.
really no level that's safe. And I was a wine drinker for so long. And it's so funny. I was just talking to a few friends of mine who are similar age, similar stages of life. But of course, everybody's in a different stage hormonally because perimenopause is very individual, but we all agreed that we can't drink wine anymore, even just a little bit. I'll have a little, if I'm having like a really fancy meal, right? And a nice glass of, Cabernet red wine or whatever, it feels like it goes well with that. Okay, maybe a little bit, but you know how a lot of women get into that habit of right before bed drinking 2 or 3 glasses of wine. No, 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 no. That is like you said, a nightmare for sleep. You're going to wake up the next day feeling horrible. And then the mood changes. Yeah.
And it takes longer. I mean, you probably remember like in your 20s, if you go out with friends and you had a few drinks and you get to bed at like 2 a.m. and you could get up at like 9 or 10 and just be pretty functional. You get up, start doing whatever you need to do, go to work, whatever. But, as you get like late 30s, 40s, like you don't recover the way as fast as you used to. It's a slower recovery. You might have a whole day where you're like, oh my God, I feel terrible. I got this headache. I just can't function. I'm exhausted. So, that's a sign too. It's like, maybe you shouldn't be doing that.
Right. Yeah. And it might be something to shift to go, okay, maybe this is a special occasion only thing. Like I said, my nice Christmas dinner with my glass of red wine, right? Or Thanksgiving. My dad is all into the fancy wine, so I'm not going to turn down my dad's wine. So, but it's just, I know me, and that goes into, and how, maybe this is a great question to ask you, like, how important is it to be self-aware of these little changes that we're noticing?
It's really important because sometimes the little changes will add up to something big that could be prevented, which is really important. And especially as our hormones start to get less, and if you're thinking about doing like, people get nervous when you talk about hormone replacement therapy. The first thing you always hear is, well, that causes cancer, so I'm not sure that's what I want to do. But that has been debunked. There's a lot of scientific data now just to show that that's not the case. But other things that we're doing can cause cancers and things like that.
Sure.
So not eating enough of the right proteins, not moving, staying sedentary. They're saying that sitting is like the worst, even be worse than smoking at this point. And people will sit at a desk for hours, 5, 6, 7 hours, and not really get up much. And then water intake too, like you've got to hydrate your body. So, I mean, alcohol is a diuretic and it's going to drain water. Caffeine is a diuretic. Caffeine is one of those things where, it goes back and forth where it's good for you, it's not good for you. But I think now they're saying that it can be, the right coffee is, again, it's got to be organic and all that. But, it can be good for the brain. So the caffeine can stimulate that, which is great, but maybe too much of a good thing too. It can dry you out. You've got to drink enough water, and just it gets to a point where there's really no choice. Like you really have to live a certain way. And if someone's not accustomed to it, when I get a woman that hasn't really been doing many of these things at all, it can be a tough learning curve. But when you can get someone who just makes like one change at a time, like maybe we pull the alcohol back and just let's eat a little bit better, or let's make sure you're getting 2 liters of water every day, or try to not go to bed at 11, maybe try to get into bed at 10, pull it back an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And we're doing that with our kids when they were smaller and you wanted them to go to bed earlier. You just like 15 minutes earlier, 15 minutes until they were going to bed at the time that you wanted them to get to sleep at. But it's just, we're the same way. We're the same animal. We're just older. But it's all important improvements that we have to make to live healthier, feel better. Everybody,
Yes.
People will say, oh, I'm just getting old. It's just the way it is. I got aches and
Right.
pains. I got this, I got that. And I'm like, I call BS. I'm like, no, it's
Mhm.
because you're not doing enough of the right things. You're not pushing yourself into that. It's uncomfortable, but once you get into a rhythm with it, it'll become just like brushing your teeth.
Yeah. 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 And the other thing that I hear a common complaint of is the anxiety creeping up
Right.
and the mental health concerns. So a lot of these things are connected. And so what do you say about that and how women are increasingly more anxious?
Yes. And I see that too. It's amazing because you see it in kids too, which is kind of sad
Mhm.
because so many kids are anxious and unsure, and they're in college and
Mhm.
they're having a hard time. And it's it really comes down to you've it's amazing, Erin, how everything, like everything you could think of really just funnels back down to you have to eat right, you have to exercise, you got to get sleep and drink water. Like
Yeah.
it's really every ailment. Like think about it, like to prevent things, like every doctor, any guru you've listened to, right? Dr. Atia, Dr. Godfrey, Dr. Hyman, Dr. Bland, you can name them all. And they all talk about Alzheimer, dementia, this, that, da, da. It always comes down to you got to get some exercise, you got to move, even if it's walking, you've got to eat right, you've got to this, you've got to that. And that really will help alleviate, I believe, a lot of anxiety too, because sometimes it's the processed food and the sugars and the dyes and the food colorings that are in a lot of the foods that people are eating. Crackers have high fructose corn. Everything has high
Mhm.
fructose corn syrup. I'm a huge
Mhm.
advocate of telling people, look at labels. You pick something
Yeah.
up, look at even almond milk. I did a post on almond milk,
Mhm.
all the fillers and the gums and all the
Yes.
stuff that's in almond milk. And you think that's a health food. Now there are 2 companies that make, look at the ingredients. It's almond, salt, and water. That's it. No carrageenan, no soy lecithin, none of that stuff, guar gum, any of that. So I really believe it's what we put in is how our body will react.
Yeah, yeah. And artificial sweeteners is another
Yes,
one that
yes,
leads to anxiety. And so I always have to touch on that because I was a Diet Coke girl for a long time. And that's just it's not putting anything recognizable into the body. And so yeah, so making those small changes and seeing, I think it's important to while there are a lot of labels out there for anxiety, for depression, and lots of people getting diagnosed even like with adult ADHD.
yep,
And I think the labels can be relieving in a lot of ways, but I think it's also a good signal to dig deeper, to look at what is causing this, what's at the root, because all of those diagnoses are really just giving us the name to a set of symptoms.
right,
Even if you look at it in the DSM, where they make the diagnoses, it's
right,
like you have this symptom, this symptom, this symptom, and there you go. Welcome to the world of anxiety. And it's like, well, yeah, well, I know I have anxiety, but what do I
right,
do about it? And so
exactly.
it's identifying what is missing. A lot of times it's what's missing from my life of all those things you just mentioned. What is missing? What could I be adding in? Or if it's food, what could I be taking out that my body's like, I don't really know if this is real food or not.
Absolutely. And our food supply is just, it's so sad what it's become. Like I said, you've got to look at labels. Even if you think something's a health food, like you can buy those pre-prepared smoothies or green drinks or
Yep.
whatever. Well, how much sugar is in it? Like I always tell my clients,
Mhm.
go right down to the carbohydrate on the label, look at the carb
Mhm.
number, and then, okay, so if it's 50 grams of carbs, say, underneath it, it'll say sugar, fiber, sugar, whatever. What's the sugar number? If the sugar number is like 12, 15, 20, 30, what I'm like, it's too much. It's
Mhm.
just too much sugar. And that's just going to cause a whole bunch of problems, health
Yeah.
problems, how you feel, how you react. And you've got to be able to look at a label and say, yeah, this is probably not the best thing. I'll go home and juice my own thing, or eat some fruit. So you get the fiber with it, and all the vitamins and the nutrients.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now tell me, how can people work with you and join your midlife mastery program and all of that?
The best way is to just hit my website. It's Linda M. Stevens, and Stevens is with a PH. So it's STEPHENS, LindaMStevens.com. I have a little calendar that'll pop up and they can book a complimentary call with me. And then my Instagram account is at Linda Stevens Fit, FIT. So those are the two easiest ways to either message me on Insta or hit my website. Either way, I see it. But
Great.
yeah.
Awesome. Now, my last question is my favorite question to ask, and that is, the name of the show is Sparking Wholeness. So,
Yeah.
if you could give one piece of advice to spark someone toward wholeness, what would it be?
I would say I'm really big on like mindfulness and practicing gratitude. I think it's a great place, and I do this every night and every morning. If you believe in God, or you're very religious, or you're spiritual, whatever it is, but I always say thank you at the end of the day. And when I wake up, it's like, thank you for another day on the planet. And thank you that I made it through another day on the planet. And then I like to count my blessings, my children, my family, running a great business, having great clients, just in being able to be a voice for people. But I really believe looking at what you have and being appreciative of what you have just makes you see things differently. When you start to spiral out of control, if you see
Mm,
stuff on social media is such a big anxiety thing for even adults, not just kids. But I think when you start to feel like that, just sit down for a second, right? And just say, I have food, clothing, shelter. I'm safe. People love me. People are concerned about me. Mel Robbins is huge on that. If you listen
mhm.
to Mel, and I get a lot of that from her. But I think that really helps keep you grounded when you just can look around and go, you know what? I know I'm dealing with this, but I'm so grateful for all of this, and that this outweighs that, and I'll manage that.
Yeah, yeah. Ooh, I love that. Thank you so much for being on the
Yeah,
show.
this
And
is great.
yeah, you have such a passion for this. And I know this is an important topic at any age. So if you are in your 20s and you made it this far, yay, that's amazing. If you're in your 30s and you made it this far, do these things that we're talking about. I mean, 20s too,
Important.
but yeah, yeah,
It just sets you up for a better lifespan.
yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again for being on the show and taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me.